A very good morning to everyone. Today we'll be discussing about ethical issue of factory fires in Bangladesh. We will be discussing questions related about the responsibility of the incident, ethical frameworks, how we can use these frameworks to decide who is responsible, is the answer ideal or realistic scenario, and what must be done from preventing this from happening again. My name is Gajendra Anand. I'll be the moderator for this discussion. Joining me are Alia, Nurul, Danusya, Christoph, and Christopher. Let's begin with briefly sharing our opinions on this matter. I'll begin with my perspective. The Bangladeshi fire factory is the incident that resulted the loss of 112 people caused by several ethical failure by multiple parties. Many families have suffered this horrible incident. However, I think that the Bangladesh government has to shoulder the majority of the blame here because of their law and rules are weak due to corruption. They fail to properly enforce the safety regulation and standards they have in place. Furthermore, some multinational corporations also share some of the blame due to their failures in oversight. First, I would like to hear from Alia.
Okay, thank you, Gajendran. So I agree with your perspective. The Bangladesh government should shoulder the main blame for the factory fire incident. They should also properly enforce the safety regulations and standard in their country. The rampant corruption and lack of accountability means these factories can continue operating in unsafe conditions without the consequences. The corruption has weakened the system law and rules of the Bangladesh government.
I see differently about this incident. While the Bangladesh government shares the blame, the factory owners and multinational corporation, which is Walmart and Sears, directly caused unsafe conditions to the factory. These companies have broken the law and put profit over safety and morally cost this of these workers. They are profiting of these unsafe conditions and not doing enough to ensure their supply chains are ethical.
That's a good point, Nurul. These big brands like Walmart and Sears are complicit in what's happening. They have the power and resources to demand higher safety standards from their suppliers, but choose not to in order to keep costs low. The workers' lives are being sacrificed for corporate profits.
Absolutely. These companies benefit from the cheap labor and turn a blind eye to conditions. They have a moral obligation to ensure worker safety, even if it cuts into their profits. They're exploiting the desperation of these workers. These government workers, mostly women, are trapped in poverty level wages and have no real power to advocate for safer conditions. There's a huge imbalance of power that enables this exploitation.
Thank you, everyone. We have highlighted the responsibilities of each side towards the factory fire incident in Bangladesh. Based on our discussion about who is responsible for the fire incident in Bangladesh, we can conclude that the Bangladesh government has played the major role for this fire incident due to lack efficiency in enforcement of safety regulation by multiple multinational government make a way for factory owner and multinational corporation to prioritize profit over worker safety at factory. Now let's talk about the ethical frameworks that can help you pack this complicated scenario. There are few frameworks will be discussed. These frameworks include social responsibility, political ethics, utilitarianism, deontological ethics, and virtue ethics. Nurul, can you start discussing some of these frameworks?
Thank you, KJ. I agree that the Bangladesh government neglected their social responsibility. The government did not enforce the safety standards due to the fears of impacting the government exports will lead them to the workers' life at a risk. The government's prioritization of economic growth over worker safety reflects a failure to uphold its duty to protect citizens. The fact that they are ranked so low on corruption index shows how deep-seated these issues are. Their decision to illegally construct additional floors and disregard the safety codes is a clear violation of their duty to ensure a safety working environment.
Thank you, Nurul. Now let's look into political ethics.
Political ethics involve principles such as integrity, honesty, and fairness in decision making. The government's prioritization of economic growth over worker safety reflects a failure to uphold its duty to protect citizens. The fact that they are ranked so low on corruption index shows how deep-seated these issues are. Bangladesh is ranked 142 out of 176 countries in terms of corruption perception, indicating a severe lack of transparency and accountability. So this corruption directly impacts the government's ability to enforce safety regulations and protect workers, as officials may be more concerned with maintaining their own power and wealth than with ensuring the well-being of the population.
Well said, Alia. Chris will talk about utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism focuses the right thing to do in any situation, taking into consideration the interests of all concerned parties. Based on a utilitarian view, the government's failure to enforce safety is most problematic. The factory owner's decision to illegally construct additional floors and ignore safety codes created hazardous working conditions and led to the deaths of 112 workers, which is a huge harm. Furthermore, multinational corporations like Walmart and Sears has also crossed the safety regulations to focus on profit over safety. Proper regulations would have prevented this and maximized worker well-being.
Thank you, Chris. Now I'll discuss about deontological ethics. Based on my viewpoint about deontological ethics is the focus on duty and moral rules. From deontological perspective, the factory owner's actions are morally repressible because he violated the workers' right by subjecting them to unsafe conditions. This violation is a clear breach of the factory owner's moral duty to provide a safe workplace for his employees. Deontology emphasizes the importance of moral duties and rights, particularly the right to a safe and healthy working environment. The factory owner's failure to provide such an environment is a direct violation of this right, which is a fundamental moral principle.
Well said, Gajen. I agree with your points about applying deontological framework in Bangladesh factory fire incident. Now let's talk about virtue ethics. Virtue ethics in business is about displaying virtuous behavior in the workplace. Based from virtue ethics standpoint, the government officials, factory owner and multinational corporations like Walmart and Sears demonstrated a lack of key moral virtues that will have been necessary to prevent this disaster.
Thank you, Danisha, for your explanation about virtue ethics. The government, factory owners, and multinational corporations all share responsibility for failing to uphold their ethical duties. Now we will discuss whether our discussion about Bangladesh factory fire is more idealistic or realistic. I believe that the scenario is realistic because it often highlights that the Bangladesh government has consistently failed to enforce safety regulation and protect the workers, despite knowing the risk involved. The factory owners has also prioritized cost cutting over safety by constructing illegal floors and neglecting safety protocols. The corruption and the lack of accountability in the government create an environment where the fire incident occurred. Multinational corporations such as on cutting costs over worker safety, factory owners frequently skip on safety measures and maintenance. This shows a struggle of maintaining profit and worker safety in the same time. Chris, could you elaborate on this?
The Bangladeshi government actions indeed reflect of bad accountability. The government has consistently failed to enforce safety regulations and protect the workers. The Bangladeshi government's failure to enforce safety regulations can be attributed to its prioritization of profit over people. The government fears that stricter regulations will negatively impact the garment industry, which is a significant source of revenue. This prioritization of profit over people has led to a culture of negligence and a lack of accountability within the government.
I agree with Chris about the statement. However, I would like to add that the industry is responsible for 80% of Bangladesh's total export earnings, with major retailers like Walmart and Sears subcontracting labor to these factories. The realistic scenario is that multinational corporations like Walmart and Sears have not taken significant steps to ensure safer working conditions in their supply chain. They have been criticized for their lack of transparency and accountability in addressing labor issues in Bangladesh. This lack of action has led to continued tragedies like the recent factory fire.
Chris has a fair point. I would like to share about factory owners' responsibility in the accident. By constructing illegal floors beyond the original structure, the owner disregards safety standards and put workers at risk. The emphasis on profitability often leads to unsafe working conditions, and safety investment are viewed irrelevant. This action directly contributes to the severity of the fire and the high number of casualties.
Okay, I agree with all the statement and I suggest that the factory's owners' action cannot be viewed in isolation. The government's failure to enforce safety regulations and hold factory owners accountable has created a system where such actions are more likely to occur. I feel that the Bangladesh government, factories owner and multinational corporation shares the same responsibility for their direct actions that put workers at risk.
Thank you everyone for their statement. Despite that, I would like to conclude that the Bangladesh factory fire is realistic. The Bangladesh government, factory owners and multinational corporations have shared responsibility in this fire incident that caused the risk of workers. Now we will discuss how to prevent these strategies from happening again. We will explore the roles of government, multinational corporation and factory owners. Let's start with the government's role. Danusha, could you explain how to give enforcement of safety regulation as top priority?
To guarantee compliance, the government, must create and enforce strict safety laws and carry out routine inspections. These include maintaining building codes, making sure that fire escape are functional, and enforcing the law to penalize infractions. The government should also endeavor to eradicate corruption that impedes the efficient implementation of regulations, maybe through the establishment of impartial monitoring organization and internet openness in the inspection procedure. Increased government accountability can greatly lower the number of these disasters.
Danisha has a fair point. However, I would like to talk about the second priority, which is there has to more accountability from global companies. Strong monitoring mechanism must be put in place by business like Walmart and Sears to make sure their subcontractors follow safety regulations. This can be done by enforcing adherence to international safety standards, performing independent audits, and offering financial assistance or incentive to firms so they can modernize the infrastructure. Multinational firms have the power to promote safer working conditions by leveraging their influence to demand greater safety standards.
Cooperate together to offer workers emergency procedures, legal rights, and safe reporting methods for safety infractions. By empowering employees via collective bargaining and education, I agree with Alia's statements. Despite that, worker education and community involvement are essential. Employees must be informed of their legal rights as well as their appropriate safety precautions. The government, non-governmental organizations, and labor unions owners may feel pressure from below to adhere to safety regulations.
I agree with Nurul's statement. However, I'd like to emphasize in the importance in public responsibilities and openness. Regarding the working conditions in factories and the efforts being made to enhance them, both the government and businesses have to be open and honest. The availability of databases that list factories that comply with safety requirements and those that do not might exert pressure on factory owners to follow safety regulations. In order to guarantee ongoing attention and action, public awareness initiative and media coverage can also help keep the problem in the public eye.
Thank you everyone for your statement. To summarize, international collaboration is crucial. International labor groups, non-governmental organizations, and nations purchasing clothing from other countries ought to work together to promote improvements in factory safety. This may entail offering financial support for safety improvements, offering technical supports, and promoting global accords that make multinational firms responsible for their supply chain. Together, this organization may exchange resources and best practice to develop a more secure and environmentally friendly. We have discussed the tragic Bangladesh factory fire and explored the ethical issue, responsibilities, and preventive steps. By discussing this issue, we can prevent such tragedies in future. Government, multinational corporation, factory owners, and individuals can make huge effort and ethical working. This concludes the forum's discussion. Thank you for your time and contribution.